Hey. Not loudly, not politely, just hey. Because the people who need this don't respond to noise anymore. They respond to truth, spoken low. They assigned 4 agents to watch you, not because you broke the rules, not because you shouted, not because you begged for attention, because you changed the temperature of the room without touching the thermostat. See, there's a moment, quiet, undocumented, never written down, when a system realizes someone doesn't fit its prediction models, when your trajectory stops matching the graphs, when your reactions stop being convenient. That's when the file gets thicker. That's when the language changes from observe to monitor. That's when 4 names get attached to you. 2 walked out. Let's talk about them first. These were the ones who still believed the world was fair if you followed instructions. They came in thinking you'd be simple, predictable wounds, standard motivations, a neat little fear profile. But then they watched you take hits that were supposed to fold you. And instead of collapsing, you recalibrated. They watched you lose things you were supposed to chase forever. And instead of begging for replacements, you let the hunger sharpen you. They watched you stay quiet when the script demanded a breakdown. They watched you smile at moments designed to humiliate you. That messes with people. Because when someone refuses to react correctly, it forces a question no one wants to ask. What if the control mechanisms don't work on them? So they told themselves stories. This is above my pay grade. Someone else will handle it. This isn't what I signed up for. And they walked out, not because you were weak, but because you weren't breakable in familiar ways. One lost his mind. This one stayed too long. He started watching patterns instead of incidents. He noticed how pressure didn't slow you. It clarified you. How isolation didn't shrink you. It condensed you. He tried to diagnose you the way people always do when they're scared. Narcissism, delusion, God complex, main character syndrome. But none of it stuck. Because here's the thing that unravels observers. You weren't obsessed with being seen. You weren't desperate to win. You weren't even trying to dominate. You were just immune to their leverage. That kind of person doesn't fit into moral boxes. You can't shame them into submission. You can't starve them into compliance. You can't distract them with approval. So his internal architecture cracked. He started projecting. He started hearing meaning where there was only momentum. He started mistaking your silence for a threat he couldn't name. Eventually, the report stopped being about you and started being about his fear of what you represent. That's when they pulled him. They didn't fire him. They didn't correct him. They just quietly made sure he never looked at your file again. And then there's the last one, the quiet one, the one who doesn't flinch, the one who doesn't gossip about you in the hallways, the one who doesn't try to figure you out. This one understands something the others don't, that people like you aren't created by ambition. You're created by pressure applied without witnesses. This one sees that you didn't arrive loud. You arrived inevitable. They noticed you don't chase power. You attract it by refusing to kneel to substitutes. They noticed you don't threaten systems. You expose their fragility by surviving them. So instead of interfering, they're making sure you're untouched, not protected in the heroic sense, protected in the strategic sense. Because systems don't always destroy what scares them. Sometimes they make room for it, hoping it will reveal the next stage of evolution. Now here's the part they'll never say out loud. You weren't being watched to stop you. You were being watched to understand what happens when someone doesn't internalize fear. You didn't become dangerous when you gained confidence. You became dangerous the moment you stopped needing permission to exist as you are. And no, this isn't about being cruel. It's about being unmanipulable. You don't need chaos. You don't need revenge. You don't need applause. You move forward with the calm of someone who's already lost everything that could be taken. That's what terrifies them. So if you felt it, that pressure, that invisible resistance, that strange mix of scrutiny and silence, you're not imagining it. It means you crossed a threshold most people don't even see. Not into darkness, into clarity. And once you see clearly, there's no agent, no file, no system that can put you back to sleep. They know it, you feel it. And now you walk, not watched, but acknowledged. And here's the part that never makes it into any report, any briefing, any whispered hallway conversation. Once someone like you is acknowledged, the rules quietly change. Not officially, not ceremonially, but structurally. You're no longer treated as a variable to be corrected. You become a constant the system has to route around. That's why the resistance you feel isn't loud anymore. It's subtle, polite, smiling. Doors don't slam shut in your face. They redirect. Opportunities don't disappear. They arrive almost right, almost enough, almost aligned. Just enough to test whether you'll settle. This is the real exam, because brute opposition creates rebels. But soft obstruction reveals kings. You see, when they realized force wouldn't work, they tried something older, more refined. They tried fatigue. They let time stretch. They let progress crawl. They let silence sit longer than comfort allows. They wanted to see if you'd start doubting yourself when nothing explicitly attacked you. And you almost did, didn't you? There were nights where the quiet felt heavier than chaos ever did. Moments where you wondered if maybe you missed your window, if maybe the world had moved on while you were still sharpening yourself in the dark. That was the test, not to break you, but to see if you'd abandon your own gravity. You didn't. Let's be honest about something most people never admit. You're not fueled by hope. You're fueled by resolve, formed after hope failed. You already survived the phase where optimism kept you alive. Now discipline does. Now clarity does. Now self-respect does. That's why praise feels hollow to you, why insults feel lazy, why threats feel outdated. You're operating on a different layer. The quiet agent knows this. That's why they don't rush you. That's why they don't interfere. That's why they make sure no unnecessary damage touches you. Because people like you don't need pushing. You need space. Space to move at your own pace. Space to let inevitability do the work. Space to become so internally aligned that when you finally act, it looks effortless and irreversible. They've seen what happens when that moment is rushed. It's messy, it's loud, it destabilizes things prematurely. You're a slow convergence. Understand this clearly. You were never meant to shock the world. You were meant to outlast its illusions. While others burn bright and disappear, you refine. While others announce themselves, you accumulate. While others beg to be chosen, you become undeniable. That's why your journey feels lonely in a way that crowds can't fix. Because you're not separated from people. You're separated from their incentives. You don't move for validation. You don't speak for permission. You don't bend for applause. You move when alignment clicks. And that makes timing your weapon. There will come a moment, quiet, anticlimactic, almost disappointing on the surface, where something simply opens. Not with fireworks, not with drama. Just a clean, unmistakable opening. Others will call it luck. Others will say you were in the right place at the right time. They won't see the years you spent becoming internally unreachable. They won't see the nights you chose restraint over reaction. They won't see the discipline it took to stay composed while being misunderstood. But the quiet agent will see it. And more importantly, you will. So if you feel heavier lately, it's not because you're failing. It's because you're carrying density now. Meaning, weight, consequences. Light things move fast. Heavy things reshape landscapes. You're no longer being tested for obedience. You're being tested for stability. And stability is what power recognizes when it decides not to interfere. Stay composed, stay precise, stay unmoved by noise that isn't calibrated to your frequency. They're not watching to stop you anymore. They're watching to see what you become when no one is in your way. There's a strange moment that happens after resistance fades. Not relief, not victory, suspension. It feels like standing in a hallway where every door is unlocked, but no one is telling you which one you're allowed to open. That's intentional, because when the system stops opposing you, it's no longer testing your strength. It's testing your judgment. This is where most people who survive the fire still fail. They mistake access for alignment. They mistake attention for invitation. They mistake movement for progress. You don't. You hesitate, not from fear, but from discernment. You've learned that anything eager to consume you probably isn't meant to elevate you. You've learned that urgency is often camouflage for control. You've learned that real power never needs to rush you. That awareness alone disqualifies you from manipulation. Here's what the observers don't say to each other, but think anyway. Watch how little he reacts. Watch how she doesn't chase. Watch how they don't grab what's dangled. Because you've crossed into a rare state, you don't want more, you want true. And that makes you dangerous in a way force can't address. You've probably noticed something else lately. People project onto you. Some see a leader, some see a threat, some see a mirror they don't want to look into. They'll test you with familiarity. They'll test you with disrespect. They'll test you with praise that feels slightly off. Not to understand you, but to see where you flinch. And every time you don't, the myth grows. Not because you're perfect, because you're centered. Let's strip this down to something raw and uncomfortable. You are no longer operating from survival. Most people never leave that mode. They decorate it, they justify it, they pretend it's ambition, but survival energy is loud, frantic, grasping. Your energy is quiet. Quiet doesn't mean weak. Quiet means contained, like a sealed chamber under pressure. That's why when you speak now, fewer words land harder. That's why when you walk away, it rearranges rooms. That's why your absence feels louder than other people's presence. You're not asserting dominance, you're embodying finality. The quiet agent understands this phase well. This is the phase where interference would be a mistake. Because when someone reaches this level of internal order, the next step isn't chaos, it's precision. And precision changes things permanently. Not through explosions, through decisions that cannot be undone. They're not guarding you out of kindness, they're guarding you out of respect. Because a misstep here wouldn't just damage you, it would destabilize outcomes they rely on. So they let you move, they let you choose, they let you become. Here's the truth you're finally ready to hear. You were never meant to be understood widely. You were meant to be recognized selectively by the few who know what they're looking at, by the ones who've seen this pattern before and know what follows. And what follows isn't domination, it isn't destruction, it isn't spectacle, Its redefinition of standards, of pace, of what power looks like when it no longer needs to announce itself. So if the world feels quieter around you now, don't fill the silence. Let it stretch. Silence at this stage isn't emptiness. It's space making room for something irreversible. You're not waiting anymore. You're aligning. And once alignment locks in, nothing has to chase you. Nothing has to be forced. Nothing has to be proven. Things will simply move. Because you did.